What if I told you that the strength you're searching for isn't found in comfort, it's found in discomfort? That the peace you crave isn't about avoiding challenges, but about learning to stand tall in the middle of them. Life will test you. It will break you down, throw you into chaos, and push you to your limits. But the difference between those who crumble and those who rise isn't what happens to them, it's how they respond. Emotional resilience isn't about avoiding pain. It's about becoming the person who can face it head-on and still move forward. And the key to that kind of strength lies in timeless Stoic practices. These are not just ideas, they are tools for survival, for clarity, for inner peace. If you want to stop being controlled by fear, by failure, by uncertainty, if you want to become mentally and emotionally unbreakable, there are 6 powerful Stoic practices that will transform how you face life's toughest moments. The first step to mastering emotional resilience is understanding the power of control. Most of the emotional turmoil we experience stems from trying to control things that are simply beyond our reach. We stress about how others perceive us, worry about outcomes we can't predict, and cling to expectations that life refuses to meet. This creates a constant internal struggle, a battle between reality and our misguided belief that we have more control than we actually do. The truth is, emotional peace begins when you recognize the difference between what you can influence and what you can't. Imagine standing on a beach, watching the waves crash against the shore. You can't stop the tide from rising. You can't control the strength of the wind or the height of the waves, but you can control how you respond. You can choose to brace yourself against the storm or step back and find shelter. That's the essence of emotional resilience, not controlling the storm, but controlling how you stand within it. Life will always throw challenges your way. Unexpected setbacks, heartbreaks, failures, but the only part of that equation that's within your control is how you choose to respond. When you focus on controlling what you can influence, you reclaim your power. Think about the energy we waste trying to control things outside our grasp. We try to force people to see things our way, to make someone love us, or to change outcomes that are already set in motion. And when things don't go as planned, we spiral, blaming ourselves, feeling like failures, and carrying unnecessary emotional baggage. But when you shift your focus to what you can control, your thoughts, your actions, your attitude, you become untouchable. External chaos loses its power over you because you stop attaching your emotional state to the uncontrollable. Take relationships, for example. You can't control how someone feels about you, no matter how much you try. You can't make someone respect you, love you, or understand you. But you can control the boundaries you set. You can choose to walk away from disrespect. You can decide how much emotional energy you give to someone. You can't make someone appreciate you, but you can control whether you continue to give your time and heart to someone who does. This shift in mindset takes you from feeling powerless to reclaiming your sense of self-worth. The same principle applies to failure. You can't guarantee that every effort will succeed. Sometimes, despite your best work, things will fall apart. But you can control how you respond. You can choose to learn from it instead of letting it define you. You can decide to try again or pivot toward a different path. The failure itself isn't the problem. The emotional weight you attach to it is what holds you back. When you separate your sense of identity from the outcome, you free yourself from the emotional toll of failure. Think about how much lighter life feels when you stop carrying the weight of what you can't control. The opinions of others, the unpredictable nature of life, the setbacks and disappointments, they no longer have the power to disrupt your inner peace. You begin to realize that your strength lies in your response, not the outcome. The person who learns to control their mind in the face of chaos becomes unshakable. They don't break when life becomes difficult. because they've trained themselves to focus only on what's within their reach. But this isn't about becoming emotionally detached or indifferent. It's about learning to care without attachment. You can give your best effort without being defined by the result. You can love someone deeply without losing yourself if they walk away. You can chase your goals with passion while knowing that success isn't guaranteed, and still be at peace with the journey. This mindset allows you to show up fully in life without the constant fear of losing control. When you focus on what you can control, you become grounded. You no longer seek validation from others because you understand that your self-worth isn't tied to their approval. You stop fearing failure because you know your value isn't defined by success. And you stop letting life's unpredictability shake your sense of peace, because you know that your power lies not in controlling the storm, but in standing steady within it. The truth is, emotional resilience begins when you stop trying to control the uncontrollable. It's about redirecting your energy toward what's within your grasp, your mindset, your choices, your perspective. Once you master that, external chaos loses its grip on you. Life doesn't have to be perfect for you to be at peace. You just need to master the art of standing calm in the middle of the storm. The second way to build emotional resilience is to develop the ability to detach from emotions without denying them. Most people think that being emotionally strong means not feeling anything, but that's not strength, that's avoidance. True strength comes from allowing yourself to feel emotions fully while not letting them control you. Life will inevitably bring moments of anger, sadness, frustration, and disappointment. The goal isn't to suppress those feelings, it's to experience them without becoming consumed by them. Think about anger. When someone insults you or betrays you, the natural reaction is to lash out or hold on to resentment. But what happens when you cling to that anger? It festers. It takes up mental space. You find yourself replaying the event in your head, building up stories about why it happened, how you were wronged, and why it's unfair. Before you know it, that single moment of betrayal has turned into a mental prison. You carry it with you everywhere you go, and it colors your interactions with others. But here's the truth. The anger itself isn't the problem. It's the attachment to the anger that creates the suffering. Emotional resilience means allowing yourself to feel the sting of anger or sadness without letting it control your actions or mindset. When you experience anger, recognize it for what it is, a passing emotional response. You don't have to react to it. You don't have to let it dictate your behavior. You can sit with it, observe it, and allow it to dissipate naturally. That's the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is impulsive and emotional. Responding is thoughtful and measured. When you develop the ability to detach from emotions, you gain the power to respond instead of react. Sadness works the same way. When you experience loss or disappointment, the natural tendency is to collapse into the sadness, to allow it to define your reality. But sadness, like anger, is just an emotional state, not a permanent truth. You can feel it without attaching your identity to it. You can grieve a loss without becoming consumed by it. The key is to sit with the sadness, allow it to move through you, and then release it. Clinging to sadness doesn't protect you from future pain. It only keeps you stuck in the past. Think about someone you know who seems unshakable in the face of adversity. It's not that they don't feel pain, it's that they've learned not to let pain define them. They've mastered the art of experiencing emotions without attachment. When things go wrong, they feel the disappointment, but they don't spiral. They process the setback, adjust their mindset, and move forward. This isn't about emotional coldness, it's about emotional mastery. It's about recognizing that emotions are temporary states, not defining truths. Fear is another emotion that thrives on attachment. When you allow fear to control your decisions, you shrink your life. You hesitate to take risks, you avoid challenges, and you settle for comfort because you don't want to face the discomfort of failure or rejection. But when you detach from fear, you take away its power. You acknowledge that fear is just a mental response, not a prediction of reality. You can feel fear without allowing it to dictate your choices. You can take action even when fear is present. That's the essence of emotional resilience, the ability to feel discomfort without being ruled by it. This detachment applies to positive emotions as well. When things are going well, it's easy to get attached to that feeling of happiness and success. But what happens when the high fades? If you've tied your sense of identity to success, you'll feel lost when the circumstances change. Emotional resilience means appreciating positive moments without becoming dependent on them. It's about knowing that your sense of inner peace isn't tied to external validation or fleeting moments of happiness. You can enjoy success without fearing its loss, because your emotional foundation isn't built on circumstances, it's built on inner strength. Learning to detach from emotions doesn't mean you stop feeling, it means you stop being ruled by what you feel. When someone insults you, you don't have to absorb it as truth. When you experience loss, you don't have to fear the inevitable fall. You feel it, you acknowledge it, and you let it go. That's emotional resilience. The ability to stand steady while emotions rise and fall like waves around you. The real power comes from knowing that no emotion, no matter how intense, has the ability to control you unless you allow it to. When you master detachment, you create space between the feeling and the reaction. That space is where your power lives. That's where you regain control. Emotional resilience isn't about shutting down or numbing yourself. It's about learning to sit with discomfort without becoming trapped by it. When you reach that place, no setback, no betrayal, no failure can shake your foundation. Because you know that you are bigger than the emotion, and that makes you untouchable. The third way to build emotional resilience is to master the art of perspective. Learning to see events not as inherently good or bad, but simply as they are. Most of the emotional pain we experience comes not from the events themselves, but from the meaning we attach to them. It's not the failure that breaks you, it's the story you tell yourself about what that failure means. It's not the insult that wounds you, it's the narrative you build around why it happened and what it says about you. The mind has a way of magnifying problems, turning small setbacks into massive crises. But that's not reality. That's perspective. And the good news is, perspective is something you can control. When you face a setback, you have two choices. You can see it as a personal attack, as proof that you're not good enough, or you can see it as an opportunity to learn and grow. Most people default to the first option. When something goes wrong, the mind immediately starts constructing a negative story. I'm not smart enough. I'll never succeed. It's pointless to keep trying. That story is what creates suffering, not the event itself. Imagine two people losing their jobs on the same day. One person spirals into self-pity and hopelessness. They tell themselves it's because they're a failure and that they'll never find another opportunity. The other person feels the disappointment but reframes it. They see it as a chance to pivot, to explore new opportunities, to finally pursue something they've been putting off. The same event, two completely different outcomes. Because of perspective, perspective is the difference between being controlled by life and taking control of life. When you can step back from the emotions and see things objectively, you gain power over them. A setback becomes feedback, not a condemnation. A rejection becomes redirection, not proof of inadequacy. A betrayal becomes a revelation about someone else's character, not a reflection of your own worth. This shift in perspective gives you freedom, because you stop allowing the external world to dictate your inner state. Think about how often we label things as good or bad based on incomplete information. You don't get the job you wanted, you call it a failure. But what if that job would have made you miserable? What if losing it opens the door to a better opportunity? You experience heartbreak and you call it a tragedy. But what if that heartbreak frees you from a relationship that was limiting your potential? We suffer because we attach fixed meanings to things that are still unfolding. Life is a long game. You have no idea how today's disappointment might lead to tomorrow's breakthrough. When you understand that, you stop reacting so intensely to temporary setbacks. You stop trying to force life to fit your expectations and instead learn to adapt and adjust. That's perspective. Perspective also helps you handle criticism and judgment from others. Most of the time, when someone insults you or tries to bring you down, it's not really about you. It's about them. Their insecurities, their frustrations, their unmet expectations, they're projecting those onto you. But when you take things personally, you give away your power. You let someone else's flawed perspective shape your emotional state. If you can step back and see it for what it is, their perspective, not truth, you protect your inner peace. You don't need to convince them they're wrong. You don't need to defend yourself. You can simply let it pass without absorbing it. This applies to praise as well. When you tie your self-worth to compliments and recognition, you give other people control over how you feel about yourself. If you believe you're valuable only because other people approve of you, you become emotionally fragile. The moment the praise stops or someone criticizes you, your confidence collapses. But when you build your sense of worth internally, when you know who you are and what you stand for, praise and criticism lose their power. You can accept the compliment without becoming attached to it. You can hear the criticism without letting it define you. That's the strength that comes from mastering perspective. Perspective also allows you to remain calm in the face of chaos. Life is unpredictable. Things will go wrong. People will disappoint you. Plans will fall apart. That's not a flaw in the system, but when you shift your perspective and accept that chaos is part of the process, you stop resisting it, you adjust, you adapt. You remain steady even when things around you are falling apart because you're not emotionally attached to the outcome. You're focused on your response. That's the power of perspective. Emotional resilience comes from knowing that you don't have to control the external world. You only have to control how you see it. You can't stop setbacks from happening, but you can control the story you tell yourself about them. You can't stop people from judging you, but you can control whether you take it personally. You can't eliminate uncertainty, but you can learn to see it as possibility rather than threat. When you change the way you see the world, you change the way you experience the world. That's what makes you mentally unbreakable. The fourth way to build emotional resilience is to cultivate inner calm through detachment. Most people go through life being emotionally tossed around by every high and low, every victory and setback. When things are going well, they feel on top of the world, confident, secure and unstoppable. But the moment things go wrong, when someone criticizes them, when plans fall apart, when uncertainty creeps in, their sense of peace crumbles. Because their emotional state is tied to external circumstances. They're at the mercy of outcomes they can't control. Detachment is about breaking that dependency. It's about building an inner foundation so solid that no matter what happens on the outside, you remain steady and composed on the inside. Detachment doesn't mean indifference. It's not about becoming cold or uncaring. It's about developing the ability to engage with life fully, without being emotionally owned by it. When you're attached to an outcome, when you feel like you need something to work out a certain way to be happy, you create vulnerability. You give that outcome power over you. If it happens, you feel validated. If it doesn't, you feel like a failure. But when you approach life with detachment, You're not emotionally tied to the result. You give your best effort, but you're not defined by the outcome. Success or failure becomes information, not identity. Praise or criticism becomes feedback, not validation. Think about how much anxiety and emotional turmoil comes from attachment. You want to impress someone, and when they don't respond the way you hoped, you feel inadequate. You work hard toward a goal, and when things don't go as planned, you feel defeated. You care deeply about someone's opinion, and when they criticize you, you feel worthless. All of that suffering comes from attachment. You've made your emotional state dependent on things you can't control. Detachment is the antidote. It's the decision to care about what you can control, your effort, your attitude, your integrity, and release what you can't. When you detach from outcomes, you regain emotional balance. You can aim for success without being destroyed by failure. You can love someone deeply without being shattered by rejection. You can strive for excellence without being paralyzed by the fear of falling short. Detachment gives you freedom. You stop living in constant fear of loss because you no longer tie your identity to external circumstances. You stop being manipulated by praise and criticism because your sense of worth comes from within. You stop fearing failure because you understand that failure is part of growth, not a reflection of your value. Detachment also helps you handle difficult situations with clarity and strength. When you're emotionally attached to an outcome, your thinking becomes clouded. Fear, frustration, and disappointment take over. You react impulsively. You make decisions from a place of weakness rather than strength. But when you're detached, you maintain emotional distance. You see the situation clearly. You respond thoughtfully rather than react emotionally. Imagine being in a high-stakes negotiation. If you're emotionally attached to winning, your anxiety will cloud your judgment. You'll become defensive, aggressive, or desperate. But if you're detached, if you understand that success or failure doesn't define you, you remain calm, you listen better, you make smarter decisions. That's the power of detachment. Detachment also strengthens relationships. When you're emotionally attached to how others treat you, you become reactive. If someone's mood shifts, you take it personally. If they criticize you, you feel wounded. If they don't meet your expectations, you feel betrayed. But when you're emotionally independent, you stop expecting people to behave a certain way to make you feel whole. You love freely without needing them to complete you. You're able to have difficult conversations without being defensive. You can accept people as they are without trying to change them or control them. That's emotional strength. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you stop clinging. You give your best effort, but you're not crushed when things don't work out. You love people deeply, but you don't need their approval to feel whole. You pursue success passionately, but you're not broken by failure. This mindset allows you to live boldly because you're not ruled by fear of loss. You become emotionally resilient because your peace no longer depends on things you can't control. Detachment also allows you to stay present. When you're emotionally attached to a future outcome, you live in a state of tension. You're always trying to control and manipulate circumstances to secure the outcome you want. That robs you of the ability to be present. But when you detach from the outcome, you stop resisting life. You stop trying to force things to happen on your timeline. You trust the process. You stay grounded in the moment because you understand that the outcome is not where your peace comes from. Your peace comes from how you show up in the process. True strength comes from knowing that you don't need to control everything to be at peace. You don't need everything to go perfectly to feel whole. You don't need the world to validate you to know your worth. Detachment gives you that freedom. It allows you to engage fully with life without being emotionally owned by it. That's what makes you unshakable. The fifth way to build emotional resilience is to accept discomfort as a path to strength. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid discomfort. They seek comfort in every form: physical, emotional, and psychological. They avoid difficult conversations to prevent conflict. They give up on challenges when things get hard. They numb themselves with distractions when life feels overwhelming. But comfort is deceptive. It promises peace, but it delivers weakness. It lulls you into a state of passivity where you stop growing, stop evolving, and stop becoming who you were meant to be. Discomfort, on the other hand, is the gateway to strength. It's the forge where resilience is built. When you stop avoiding discomfort and start embracing it, you become emotionally unbreakable. Think about how strength is built in the physical body. If you want to build muscle, you have to stress your muscles. You have to lift heavy weights and push your body past its limits. Without that stress, the muscle won't grow. It's the discomfort, the burning sensation, the fatigue, the soreness that signals growth. Emotional strength is no different. When you face discomfort, fear, uncertainty, failure, rejection, you are building emotional resilience. Every time you push through discomfort rather than retreat from it, you become stronger. Every time you sit with uncomfortable emotions rather than escape them, you become more resilient. Growth and strength don't come from ease, they come from struggle. Most people make the mistake of thinking that emotional strength means not feeling discomfort. They think strength is about being unaffected by life's challenges, but strength isn't about not feeling. It's about feeling everything fully and still moving forward. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to act despite fear. Resilience isn't about never feeling hurt, it's about being able to sit with that hurt without letting it consume you. The goal isn't to eliminate discomfort, it's to train yourself to handle it without breaking. Discomfort is not a threat, it's an opportunity. It's life's way of sharpening you, refining you, and preparing you for more. Avoiding discomfort leads to weakness. When you avoid difficult conversations to prevent conflict, you weaken your relationships. When you avoid failure by not taking risks, you weaken your confidence. When you numb yourself with distractions to avoid pain, you weaken your emotional stability. Comfort creates fragility. It makes you dependent on things being easy. When life inevitably becomes hard, when things don't go as planned, when challenges arise, you're not prepared. But when you make peace with discomfort, you become adaptable. You become the person who can handle setbacks without falling apart. You become the person who can sit with uncertainty without being consumed by anxiety. You become the person who can face failure without losing faith. Facing discomfort also sharpens your mind. When you sit with discomfort rather than run from it, you learn to see it clearly. Instead of reacting impulsively, you develop the ability to respond thoughtfully. Most emotional weakness comes from a reactive mind, from the tendency to panic, avoid, or lash out when things get uncomfortable. But when you face discomfort head-on, you retrain your nervous system. You teach yourself to stay calm under pressure. You learn how to breathe through stress rather than be consumed by it. You develop the ability to hold difficult emotions without being controlled by them. That's mental toughness. Embracing discomfort also helps you detach from outcomes. Most emotional suffering comes from the belief that things have to work out a certain way for you to be okay. You think you need success to feel valuable. You think you need approval to feel worthy, but discomfort teaches you that you're stronger than any outcome. When you face failure and survive it, you realize that failure doesn't define you. When you experience rejection and come out stronger, you realize that your worth isn't tied to others' approval. Discomfort strips away the illusion that your peace comes from external circumstances. It reveals that your strength comes from within. One of the most powerful lessons discomfort teaches you is that you can handle more than you think. Most people underestimate their capacity for pain. They assume that if things get too hard, they'll collapse. But discomfort stretches you. It shows you that you can survive failure, you can survive loss, you can survive disappointment, and not only can you survive it, you can grow from it. The things that feel unbearable at first become manageable over time. You develop emotional endurance. You become the person who can face any storm without losing your center. That's the gift of discomfort. When you stop fearing discomfort, you become unstoppable. You stop letting fear dictate your decisions. You stop avoiding challenges because they might be hard. You stop settling for less because you're scared to fail. Discomfort becomes a training ground. Every difficult moment becomes an opportunity to build strength. Every setback becomes a chance to sharpen your mind and fortify your spirit. You stop being afraid of life's challenges because you've already proven to yourself that you can handle them. This mindset transforms how you approach life. You stop looking for the easy path because you understand that ease doesn't lead to strength. You stop trying to avoid pain because you know that pain is a teacher. You stop being afraid of uncertainty because you've learned that you can face the unknown and survive it. Strength doesn't come from comfort. Strength comes from choosing to stand in discomfort and knowing that you are strong enough to endure it. That's the foundation of emotional resilience. The sixth way is to practice acceptance of things beyond your control. This is one of the hardest but most liberating lessons you can learn. So much of the emotional turmoil you experience isn't because of what's happening, it's because of your resistance to it. You struggle not because life is unfair, but because you refuse to accept that some things are simply out of your hands. When you try to control the uncontrollable, you create a tension that pulls you in every direction, leaving you emotionally exhausted and mentally defeated. But when you accept that some outcomes are beyond your influence, you reclaim your power. You stop fighting battles that were never yours to fight in the first place. Think about the times you've felt overwhelmed. Maybe it was when someone betrayed you, when a relationship ended, or when an opportunity slipped through your fingers. In those moments, your mind raced with questions. Why did this happen? What could I have done differently? How do I fix it? But the truth is, some things aren't meant to be fixed, they're meant to be released. Clinging to what's lost or trying to control the actions of others is like trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you grip, the more it slips through your fingers. And yet, that's what so many people do. They spend their lives fighting reality instead of learning to work with it. There's a quiet strength in saying, "This is out of my hands," and that's okay. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you give up. It means you stop giving your energy to things that you cannot change. You stop carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders and focus instead on what you can control: your mindset, your actions, your response. You can't control how others treat you, but you can control how you respond. You can't control the outcome of every effort, but you can control the effort you put in. You can't control whether life gives you what you want, but you can control how you handle it when that's where real strength comes from. Not from bending the world to your will, but from standing steady when it refuses to bend. This isn't about being passive. It's not about giving up. It's about recognizing that true control comes from mastering your internal state, not external circumstances. When you stop resisting the reality of life, you stop wasting energy on the impossible. You free yourself from the emotional drain of constant frustration, disappointment, and anger. You learn to flow with life instead of fighting against it. It's like being in a storm. You can't stop the wind from blowing, but you can adjust your sails. You can't stop the rain from falling, but you can decide to dance in it. Acceptance gives you that freedom. It allows you to remain centered even when everything around you is chaotic. This kind of acceptance requires humility. It means admitting that you don't have all the answers, that you can't always win, that some things are simply beyond your reach. And that's hard. The ego wants to control everything. It wants to win every battle, to have every outcome go its way. But the ego is also the source of most suffering. When you let go of that need for control, you also let go of the suffering that comes with it. You stop tying your self-worth to You stop measuring your value by how many things go your way. You begin to understand that peace comes not from getting what you want, but from being at peace with whatever comes. There's a story of a man who lost everything in a fire, his home, his possessions, everything was gone. And yet, when people expected him to break down in despair, he remained calm. When they asked him how he could remain so composed after losing everything, he simply said, "I lost things, not myself." That's the power of acceptance. It's knowing that your peace isn't tied to what you own, to who stays in your life, or to how the world treats you. It's tied to your ability to remain grounded, no matter what happens. When you master acceptance, you master freedom. You're no longer bound by the highs and lows of life, because your strength doesn't come from circumstances. It comes from within. You understand that life will give and life will take, but your sense of self remains untouched. This is what allows you to move through life with clarity and resilience. You face each moment as it is, not as you wish it would be. You stop trying to bend the world to your will and instead focus on bending yourself towards strength, wisdom, and peace. And in that space, you discover that the things you once feared losing were never the source of your peace to begin with. The source was always within you.